The courtroom buzzed with tension and curiosity. Reporters filled the benches alongside local residents, their eyes bouncing between a uniformed officer, a large German shepherd seated calmly at his side, and the judge presiding over what had become the most unusual case the town of Elmdale had seen in years. The dog, Duke, wasn't just any dog. He was a retired canine officer who had served the Elmdale Police Department for nearly 8 years. Known for his bravery, discipline, and near-legendary scent-tracking abilities, Duke had helped solve dozens of cases. He had uncovered hidden narcotics, tracked missing children, and even taken down armed suspects. His name was synonymous with trust and loyalty. But now, Duke wasn't being honored. He was being accused. At the center of the case was a disturbing allegation. A local man named Gerald Blake claimed Duke attacked him without provocation in a neighborhood park just weeks earlier. Gerald's lawyers argued that the dog, no longer under formal duty, had become unstable and dangerous. The man insisted Duke lunged at him unprovoked, leaving a deep wound in his arm that required several stitches. The incident, according to him, proved the dog was no longer safe to live freely among people. The consequence? Gerald was demanding Duke be euthanized. Seated next to Duke was Officer Ray Morrison, the man who had trained, lived with, and worked alongside Duke from the very beginning. Ray's jaw was tight, his eyes weary but resolute. He wore his dress uniform, though the way he kept gently stroking Duke's fur revealed his emotional investment. He wasn't just defending a retired partner, he was defending family. This dog is not violent, Ray had told the court during the initial proceedings. He acted on instinct to protect a child from danger. The narrative being told here is missing the heart of the truth. But there was a problem. No one had officially reported a child being involved in the incident. The department had filed no follow-up reports confirming any specific victim. Without evidence or a named witness, Ray's defense appeared shaky. Worse, the prosecution was painting the entire event as a case of a once glorious police dog becoming too aggressive in retirement. Outside, the media swarmed. Headlines online had already branded Duke as the rogue canine. Animal rights activists were divided. Some sympathized with the loyal canine, others demanded responsibility. The town was torn. In the third row of the courtroom, quietly tucked between two older women, sat Emily Carter. She was a single mother in her late 20s, dressed modestly, trying to keep her 3-year-old daughter Lily quiet and entertained. Lily clutched a small plush dog in her hands, the fur worn from years of affection. Her large eyes never left Duke. It hadn't been Emily's plan to come to court. She wasn't involved in the case, didn't know Officer Ray personally, and hadn't spoken to a single reporter. But when she saw Duke's picture in the local paper, a chill ran down her spine. She recognized him. Her daughter had mentioned the big dog, before described how he had jumped over her and stopped a scary man. It seemed like toddler nonsense at the time. But the timing of the trial and the location of the incident couldn't be a coincidence. Emily had come to court just to watch, to see if her instincts were right. She hadn't planned to say a word, but Lily couldn't sit still. She kept standing on the bench, peeking over heads to see Duke. She kept whispering, "Mommy, that's him. That's the good boy. The one who helped me." Emily hushed her, brushing her curls from her face, gently tugging her back down. But Lily was persistent. By the time the bailiff called for a short recess, Emily's heart was racing. She couldn't ignore her daughter's insistence any longer. Taking a deep breath, she whispered to Lily, "What do you mean, sweetie? You remember that dog?" Lily nodded. "He's the dog that saved me from the mean man with the loud voice." Emily's mouth went dry. Her hands started trembling. She hadn't heard Lily describe the man that way before. Weeks earlier, they had been at the park. Emily had been distracted, tying her shoe while Lily wandered just a few feet ahead toward the play area. Suddenly, a man had emerged from the sidewalk, shouting and stumbling toward the fence. He looked drunk. She remembered screaming Lily's name, sprinting toward her. She also remembered the massive blur of brown and black that leapt between them. The dog. The man had run off shortly after. The dog had growled, barked once, then chased the man briefly before returning. In the panic, she had scooped Lily into her arms and rushed home. It had happened so fast. She never filed a report. But now, as she sat watching Duke in the courtroom, the pieces snapped together. Her daughter wasn't making up stories. She had seen Duke in action. And if what Lily was saying was true, then the entire courtroom had missed the key to the case. Emily hesitated, battling doubt and nerves. Could a 3-year-old's memory sway a courtroom? Would they even let Lily speak? But looking at Duke, calm but solemn, and at Officer Ray, who looked like a man ready to lose his best friend, she knew she had to try. Quietly, she approached one of the defense team members during the recess. "Excuse me," she whispered, gripping Lily's hand. "My name's Emily Carter. I think my daughter was the child your dog protected. She remembers him." The attorney's eyes widened. He glanced toward the judge's clerk, then leaned down to Lily's eye level. "You saw Duke before, sweetheart?" Lily nodded. "He saved me from the loud man." Emily could barely speak. Her words caught in her throat. The courtroom hadn't yet resumed, but the mood around her shifted. Minutes, the judge was informed. After a tense discussion with both legal teams, and after Officer Ray vouched for Duke's calmness around children, an extraordinary and rare decision was made. The judge allowed a brief, supervised interaction between Duke and Lily right there. In front of the courtroom, everyone was instructed to remain silent. Cameras were barred. No movements. No distractions. As the bailiff called the room back to order, Emily whispered to Lily, "Are you ready?" Lily smiled and nodded. And as she began walking small steps, curls bouncing, stuffed dog in one hand toward the real-life hero who had saved her once before, the entire courtroom held its breath. They had no idea that what Lily would say next would change everything. The courtroom was completely silent. Not a cough, not a shuffle, not even the rustling of papers broke the stillness. All eyes followed the small figure of Lily Carter as she walked carefully toward the center of the courtroom where Duke sat, leashed beside Officer Ray. The tension was no longer about legal arguments or evidence. It was about a moment, a rare, unscripted human moment that no one could have predicted. Lily, dressed in a sky-blue sweater and white leggings, looked fearless as she approached the large German shepherd. Her small fingers still clutched her worn plush dog, and her curls bounced slightly with each step. Officer Ray, watching closely, gently guided Duke to sit still. Duke, though alert, didn't move an inch. As Lily reached him, the entire courtroom leaned forward slightly as if drawn in by an invisible cord. Then came the moment that would stun everyone. Lily crouched down in front of Duke and smiled softly. She reached out her small hand and placed it gently on his snout. Duke sniffed, then closed his eyes, relaxing completely. It was a moment of instant trust, deep and unspoken. Then, Lily leaned in closer, placing her mouth near his ear, and whispered something no one could hear. The courtroom remained frozen. Officer Ray's hand, which had been gripping Duke's leash tightly, loosened. Duke's ears flicked, and slowly, gracefully, he lay down beside Lily. And then, astonishingly, he rested his large head in her lap. It was the kind of moment that made time stop. Some people gasped. A few wiped away tears. Emily, standing a few feet behind, felt her chest ache with emotion. She had always known her daughter was special, but this connection was something greater. Something no one could explain. The judge, sitting high above the room, blinked slowly. His expression softened. Even the courtroom artist, who had been sketching quickly to keep up with the drama, stopped mid-stroke. The reporters in the back row stared, unsure if they were allowed to react. Can someone tell us what she said? The judge finally asked, his voice slightly unsteady. Emily stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. She said, "You're my hero, good boy." That's what she told him. A collective sigh echoed through the room. The words, so simple yet powerful, hit harder than any legal statement. The judge leaned back in his chair. "We will take another short recess," he said gently. "This court needs to collect itself." As the gavel tapped lightly on the desk, Lily stood up. Duke followed, calmly and obediently, tail wagging slowly. She turned to Officer Ray and reached out her hand. "You take care of him," she said sweetly. Ray, overwhelmed, bent down and then took Lily's hand in his. "I promise I will. Thank you, Lily." Emily knelt beside her daughter, tears now rolling freely. She hugged her tightly, her voice cracking. "You did something amazing, sweetheart." "I just told the truth," Lily replied innocently. Outside the courtroom, the hallway buzzed like a stirred hive. Word had already reached the local news station, which interrupted its regular broadcast to report what was being called a stunning emotional turn in the trial. Photographers waited by the doors, hoping for a glimpse of the child and the dog who had silenced a courtroom with a whisper. Back inside, legal teams scrambled to reassess their positions. The defense attorney, once cautious, now had a game-changing testimony, even if it came from a toddler. The prosecution, however, wasn't ready to fold. Gerald Blake, the man who accused Duke, sat fuming in the corner. His lawyer whispered furiously, trying to maintain their narrative. But the emotional tide had turned. People no longer saw Duke as a threat. They saw him as a protector. They saw Lily as the symbol of the truth no one had previously heard. Officer Ray sat in the corner with Duke, stroking his head slowly. "You never fail me, do you, boy?" he whispered. Duke responded with a soft thump of his tail on the floor. Judge called everyone back 15 minutes later. His demeanor had changed from formal to thoughtful. He looked over the courtroom slowly before addressing them. This court is not only a place for laws and policies. It's also a place where truth can take many forms. And sometimes it comes from the smallest voices. He looked at the defense attorney. "Do you have anything more to add?" The attorney stood and said, "Yes, Your Honor. With the court's permission, we'd like to request time to gather more evidence. Ms. Carter believes there may be neighbors who witnessed the incident and possibly have security footage. We'd also like to formally include Lily's statement in the case." The judge nodded slowly. "Granted. I will allow a 48-hour recess for new evidence to be presented. This case has shifted in nature, and I believe it warrants deeper consideration." As people began filing out, Emily turned to Officer Ray. "Do you think this will help?" He smiled, eyes glossy. "It already has." That night, the story made national headlines. News anchors spoke in awe about the girl who had whispered to a police dog and changed the course of a trial. Social media exploded with support for Duke, with hashtags like #GoodBoyDuke and #HeroDog trending across the country. Offers poured in from charities, canine advocacy groups, even children's book authors wanting to tell Duke's story. But Emily ignored the noise. She focused on Lily, who asked only one question before bed. "Can Duke come to my birthday?" Emily smiled, kissed her forehead, and said, "Maybe one day." In her room, surrounded by stuffed animals, Lily fell asleep hugging her plush dog, whispering once more, "You're a good boy." Downstairs, Emily opened her laptop. She found the park's neighborhood Facebook group and posted a message. Were you at Willow Park on the 14th last month around 4 p.m.? Did you see a dog defend a child? Please reach out. It's important. Within minutes, she received her first message. The tide was turning, and the truth was on its way. By morning, Emily's message had exploded across the neighborhood Facebook group. Dozens of comments piled up overnight. Most offered support. Others shared memories of Duke's service. But one stood out, a woman named Karen Miller, who lived 2 houses from the park's east entrance. Her message was brief. I think I have what you're looking for. My doorbell camera caught something that day. Emily's hands trembled as she typed her response. Minutes later, they were talking on the phone. Karen had saved the footage, but hadn't thought much of it until she read Emily's post. I didn't know it was serious. All I saw was a man acting odd near a child, and a big dog lunging in. I thought it was a stray. I didn't connect it to the court case. Emily didn't waste a second. With permission, she forwarded the video file to Officer Ray and the defense attorney. The quality wasn't perfect, but the moment was clear. A small child walking near the sidewalk, a man approaching fast with erratic movement, and then Duke entering the frame at lightning speed, planting himself between the man and child, growling with force. The man stumbled back, shouting something indistinct. Duke didn't bite immediately. He barked first, warning. Only when the man lunged did Duke strike, biting the man's arm just once before backing away. It was exactly the proof Ray had been praying for. By noon, the defense team had submitted the video to the court with a motion to include it as new evidence. The judge approved an emergency hearing the next day. News crews outside the courthouse reported every development and social. Media began calling Lily the little truth teller. Inside the courtroom the next day, there was a different energy, hopeful, electric, and unshakable. As the video played for the courtroom, there was no longer room for doubt. The footage spoke louder than any lawyer. Gasps filled the room as Duke's restraint became evident. He had only used force when necessary. Officer Ray watched with quiet pride, his hand resting gently on Duke's collar. The prosecutor tried to argue the footage didn't show what happened immediately before or after the bite, but the judge wasn't moved. His eyes stayed locked on the frame, showing Duke standing guard in front of Lily, every muscle tense, clearly focused on protection, not aggression. Then, something even more surprising happened. Another witness stepped forward. A man named Mr. Dennis, who managed landscaping around Willow Park, approached the defense during recess. I saw the whole thing, he said. Didn't want to get involved, but now I realize I should have spoken up sooner. That dog saved that little girl. He was allowed to testify that same day. Calm, direct, and trustworthy, he told the court. How he had been fixing a broken water line near the edge of the playground when he heard a scream. He turned and saw the man later identified as Gerald Blake rushing toward the child. He looked angry. The kind of angry that makes your instincts kick in, Dennis said. Did you see Duke attack without warning? The judge asked. No. Sir, Dennis replied firmly. The dog didn't lunge until the man reached toward the girl. It was quick, but deliberate. That dog did exactly what he was trained to do. He protected her. The judge nodded, scribbling notes. The defense rested with confidence. The courtroom buzzed again. Everyone could feel the shift. The momentum had turned. What began as a case to destroy a dog's legacy was becoming a story of redemption, truth, and loyalty. Across the room, Gerald Blake squirmed in his chair. His face turned pale as his own lies began unraveling. During a break, Lily once again approached Duke. This time she didn't whisper. She hugged him in front of the cameras and said, I remember you now. You barked at the bad man and saved. And Duke wagged his tail and gave her face a gentle lick, causing laughter and sniffles across the courtroom. Even the judge allowed himself a small smile. That evening, the footage aired on national news. Anchor after anchor called Duke a hero. Editorials were written. Animal rights organizations began organizing peaceful rallies in support of canine safety laws. Someone even started a petition to ensure that no retired police dog could ever be put on trial without significant review. But none of that mattered to Emily Doctor. The most important thing was that the truth had finally found its way into the light. Lily slept soundly that night, her arms wrapped around her plush dog. Downstairs, Emily sat at the kitchen table, staring at her laptop. A new email had arrived from Officer Ray. Subject: Thank you. Message: Emily, I don't know how to express this properly. If you hadn't come forward, if Lily hadn't remembered, I might have lost him. I owe you everything. Tomorrow's closing statements will be strong. But no matter what the verdict, know this. You and your daughter saved my partner's life. I'll never forget it. Emily wiped away a tear. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. People stood in the halls just to listen. The judge allowed the final statements. The prosecution kept it short, knowing they'd lost the moral edge. They claimed the court should still consider safety. Even a well-trained dog can become unpredictable, they said. But the defense came in strong. The attorney walked the room, his tone steady and personal. This dog was accused of being dangerous. But today, you've seen with your own eyes what he really is: a guardian, a protector, a loyal companion who risked everything for a child he didn't even know. His actions weren't reckless. They were heroic. He paused, then pointed toward Lily, who sat on the bench swinging her feet, smiling. And that little girl is here today because Duke did what no one else could. She remembers. The dog remembers. The truth remembers. Now it's time for the court to remember too. The judge looked over the courtroom slowly, then called for a brief recess before the verdict. As people filed out again, a quiet understanding filled the room. This wasn't just a trial about a dog bite anymore. This was about justice. For a dog who had never failed his duty. For a child whose small voice changed everything. And for a town that had nearly forgotten what true loyalty looked like. The courtroom doors creaked open as the final recess ended. People filed back into their seats, but the energy was different now, charged with anticipation. There was no idle chatter, no hushed speculation, just silent reverence for the moment. Everyone knew was coming. Lily sat in her mother's lap, giggling softly as Duke's tail swished against the wooden floor. He sat beside Officer Ray once again, ears perked, eyes calm. There was no trace of fear or confusion in him, just quiet dignity. Ray gently stroked the fur behind Duke's ears, whispering something only the dog could hear. The judge returned to his bench, his black robe flowing like a curtain drawn before the final act. He adjusted his glasses, looked down at the stack of papers before him, and up at the packed courtroom. He took a long pause before speaking. "This case has taken unexpected turns," he began, his voice steady. "What began as a routine civil hearing regarding animal control has become something far more important." He looked over to Gerald Blake, who now avoided eye contact with anyone, his face sullen, pale, and glistening with sweat. "We have heard emotional testimonies. We've seen video evidence. We've witnessed moments in this courtroom that cannot be measured by law books alone. And while this is not a criminal trial, it is nonetheless one that requires judgment, not just legal, but moral." Lily clung tighter to her mother's arm, watching the judge with wide eyes. Emily gently kissed her forehead, whispering a prayer under her breath. Based on the submitted evidence, the judge continued, including doorbell footage, eyewitness accounts, and the statement of a minor, deemed credible through uncontested circumstances. He paused again. This court finds that Duke the canine dog acted not with aggression, but with instinctive protection in response to an imminent threat. A wave of emotion rippled through the room. Officer Ray exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Emily's eyes filled with tears. The judge wasn't finished. This court does not find the dog dangerous. The request for euthanasia is denied. Furthermore, the court recognizes Duke's years of honorable service and notes that he displayed restraint and discipline consistent with high-level canine training. The case is hereby dismissed. Cheers erupted, uncontainable despite the gavel, banging repeatedly. Order! Order! But there was no holding back the joy. People applauded, hugged, and some even cried openly. Lily clapped her tiny hands and jumped down to hug Duke, who barked once as if joining in the celebration. Cameras snapped, and the courtroom, for a moment, felt more like a celebration hall than a place of judgment. Gerald Blake stormed out, his attorney trailing behind him, their faces tight with defeat. Emily walked over to Officer Ray, Lily trailing. Beside her with her arms wrapped around Duke's neck. "Thank you," Ray said quietly, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder. "You saved him." Emily smiled through tears. He saved her first. The judge cleared his throat, getting everyone's attention again. "Before we dismiss for the day, I would like to personally commend the child involved in this case, Miss Lily Carter." The entire courtroom turned toward her. She froze for a second, then smiled shyly as her mother lifted her into her arms. "She reminded all of us," the judge said, "that truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it comes in the smallest voice, with the biggest heart." The courtroom rose in a standing ovation, not just for Lily, not just for Duke, but for the triumph of truth, loyalty, and innocence. Outside, the courthouse steps were packed. Reporters thrust microphones forward, flashes went off, and people chanted Duke's name. It was chaos. Emily shielded Lily with her arms, while Officer Ray tried to guide them through the crowd. Finally, one reporter broke through the noise and asked, "Emily, what are your plans now that the case is over?" Emily paused and smiled. "We're just going to enjoy life. And Duke's going to get all the belly rubs he wants." Another reporter turned to Officer Ray. "What's next for Duke?" Ray knelt beside his dog, ruffling his fur. "Retirement. And if Emily and Lily are willing, maybe a new home with them." Emily's eyebrows raised in surprise. "Are you serious?" Ray nodded. "He's getting older. He needs a family, not a uniform. And I can't think of anyone better." Lily jumped up and down. "Mommy, please, I want him." Emily laughed. "I think you've already won his heart." And just like that, it was settled. The next morning, a fresh article hit the national news. The headline read, "Little girl saves hero dog with a whisper. Now they're a family." People across the country were touched. Artists began drawing portraits of Lily and Duke. A local bakery made Duke's Donuts with paw prints on top, giving a portion of proceeds to canine units. Schools invited Officer Ray to speak. Children wrote letters to Lily, thanking her for being brave. Meanwhile, back in Elmdale, life began to return to normal. Duke settled into his new home like he had always belonged. He had a plush bed by the window, a fenced backyard, and more toys than he could keep up with. Lily took charge of feeding him, brushing his coat, and reading him bedtime stories every night. One afternoon, while watching Lily and Duke run through the yard chasing bubbles, Emily sat with Officer Ray on the porch. "She talks about him constantly," she said. "He's her whole world now." "He's lucky to have her," Ray said. "They healed each other, you know." Emily nodded. "Yeah, they really did." They sat in silence. watching the bond between girl and dog deepen by the minute. And as the sun dipped behind the Elmdale hills, painting the sky in gold and fire, Duke and Lily curled up together in the grass, two souls forever linked by a whisper, a courtroom, and a moment that reminded the world what loyalty truly means. Life after the courtroom shifted gently, like the changing of seasons. For Duke, retirement didn't mean slowing down. It meant waking up each morning to the sound of Lily's laughter echoing through the house. It meant chasing butterflies across the backyard instead of criminals down alleyways. It meant finally being what he had never been allowed to be before, a family dog. Emily watched the bond between her daughter and Duke blossom. Where one went, the other followed. Lily would dress Duke in play-clothes, scarves, tiaras, sunglasses, and he would sit patiently, tail wagging, as if he understood it was his new job. And in many ways, it was. Though his badge was retired, his purpose remained. Officer Ray visited often, checking in to see how Duke was settling in. He brought chew toys and special food, but most of all, he brought his stories. Lily sat on the porch steps every time, eyes wide, listening to tales of Duke's bravery on the force. He once tracked a missing girl through 2 miles of forest. Ray said one afternoon, "Didn't stop, didn't rest. Found her just before dark." Lily gasped, "Duke, you're a real-life superhero." Duke thumped his tail proudly. Emily smiled, watching the way Ray looked at the dog, still full of admiration, even if he no longer lived under his roof. "I thought losing him would break me," Ray admitted one evening. "But seeing him like this, I think it's healing me instead." "Healing all of us," Emily replied softly, but something unexpected was beginning to stir, something Lily had sparked, even if she didn't realize it. 2 weeks after the trial, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from a local elementary school, inviting Emily and Lily to speak at a special assembly on everyday heroes. The principal had heard about their story and thought Lily's voice could inspire the students. Emily hesitated. Public speaking wasn't something she'd ever done. But Lily was excited. "Can I show them my drawing of Duke saving me?" she asked. "Only if you let me frame it first," Emily smiled. They accepted the invitation. The auditorium was packed. Students sat cross-legged on the floor, while teachers lined the walls. Duke wore a red bandana around his neck, and Lily wore her favorite purple dress. When Emily and Lily walked to the stage, Duke trotted right behind them like a celebrity. Emily spoke first, briefly recounting what happened at the park and in court. Then she passed the microphone to Lily, who held her drawing high. "This is Duke," she said confidently. "He used to be a police dog, and now he's my best friend. He's not just a hero because he saved me. He's a hero because he listens when people don't, and he knows how to protect others, even little kids like me." The applause was thunderous. After the assembly, teachers approached Emily with another idea. "Have you ever considered getting Duke certified as a therapy dog?" one asked. "He has the perfect temperament." Emily hadn't, but she started thinking. The next week, she called Officer Ray. "Do you think Duke could become a therapy dog?" Ray didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." He was trained to stay calm under pressure. If he can work through police standoffs, he can handle classrooms and hospitals. The idea took root. Emily reached out to a local organization that specialized in training retired service animals for therapeutic work. They were thrilled. Duke's record as a K9 was impressive, but the fact that he had also helped comfort a child during a courtroom trial, that was rare. Duke began his training again, gentler this time, slower, but still with purpose. Lily helped him practice by pretending to be a patient. She'd lie on the couch and wait for Duke to come comfort her. Then she'd giggle and reward him with treats. The examiners were amazed. Within a month, Duke was officially certified as a therapy dog. His first visit was to the same courthouse where his fate had once hung in the balance. But this time, he wasn't the accused, he was the comfort. He was invited to sit with children waiting to testify, to ease their fear with his calm presence. He wore a vest with his name and title, Duke Certified Therapy Dog, K9 Retired. HRO the staff clapped when he entered. Even the judge who had presided over his case came down to pet him. It's good to see justice not only done, the judge said, but given a second life. Duke didn't bark. He just leaned in closer and rested his head on the judge's lap. The story continued to grow. Hospitals began requesting visits. Children undergoing treatments, victims of trauma, and even elderly patients with memory loss all lit up when Duke walked in. His gentle nature, wise eyes, and unshakable calm brought warmth that no medicine could dot. Lily always insisted on coming. With him, proudly walking beside her dog in every building they entered. She's the little whisper that saved his life, one nurse whispered once. And now he's giving that gift back. Emily began documenting Duke's visits on a small blog. It went viral. People around the country sent letters, asking if Duke could come to their cities, their schools, their hospitals. But Emily knew. The secret to Duke's strength was the quiet bond he had with Lily, the girl who had said just the right words. When the world was ready to judge him unfairly, they didn't need fame. They had something deeper every night. After a day full of visits and smiles, Duke would curl up beside Lily's bed. She'd kiss him on the nose and say the same words she had whispered that unforgettable day in court. You're my hero. Good boy. And every night, Duke would close his eyes, not as a warrior or a witness, but as a dog who had finally found his home, his peace, and his purpose. Duke's days were now full of smiles, wagging tails, and quiet healing. Every week, Emily, Lily, and Duke visited schools, hospitals, therapy centers, and even trauma support groups. With each visit, people would open up, laugh, cry, and hug the gentle German shepherd who had once been the center of a courtroom storm in every place they visited. Lily was never far behind. At 4 years old now, she had grown into her role beside Duke. She introduced him to children, explained how he was very brave, but also loves peanut butter, and even brought her drawing book to give personalized pictures to those who seemed especially sad. One sunny afternoon, the trio visited Elmdale Children's Hospital. It was one of their regular stops, where Duke had already become something of a local legend. A little boy named Theo, recovering from leukemia treatments, had requested to see Duke every time he came in for infusions. On this visit, Duke walked straight to Theo's room and laid his head on the boy's lap. The room lit up with joy. Emily stood quietly at the door, her heart full, as Theo's mother mouthed, "Thank you." But outside the hospital, something else stirred. A man leaned against a telephone pole, half hidden by the vending machines near the ambulance bay. He wore a cap pulled low over his face and held a newspaper with Duke's picture on the front. His jaw twitched as he stared. It was Gerald Blake. Since losing the case, Gerald had disappeared from the public eye. After being embarrassed in court and exposed by video evidence and eyewitness accounts, he had no grounds for appeal. His name became synonymous with lies and cowardice. His business failed. Neighbors avoided him. Online, he was mocked. He blamed Duke, and he blamed the little girl who had whispered to him in court. Now, watching Duke through the glass doors of the hospital, Gerald's fingers tightened around the paper. Inside, the mood was entirely different. Nurses handed Lily a small badge that said, "Junior Hero, official friend of therapy dogs." She beamed with pride and ran to show Duke, who wagged his tail enthusiastically. "You think he likes it?" she asked Emily. "He loves it," Emily replied. "You made him proud." That evening, they returned home, unaware that Gerald had followed them. From across the street, he sat in an old blue sedan, engine off, eyes locked on the house. He watched as Lily danced around in the front yard while Duke trotted beside her, tossing a tennis ball up into the air. I should have ended that mutt when I had the chance. He muttered to himself, bitterness dripping from every word. A few days later, Emily noticed something odd. A torn envelope sat in their mailbox with no stamp or return address. Inside was a photo grainy and unclear of Duke lying in there. Backyard. On the back were 6 words scribbled in black ink. Monsters don't deserve happy endings. Emily's chest tightened. She showed the note to Officer Ray the moment he stopped by that evening. He read it, eyes narrowing. "This is a threat," he said. "And I think I know who sent it." "You think it's him?" Emily whispered. Ray nodded. "I'd bet my badge, but we need proof." Ray called the local precinct and requested increased patrols near Emily's neighborhood. He also installed a new security camera above the garage and gave Emily a direct emergency radio he still had from his active duty days. But Ray knew something else too. Duke would never let anything happen to Lily. Not again. And he was right. That same night, just past midnight, Duke began growling low from his spot at the foot of Lily's bed. Emily sat up, heart racing. Then she heard the soft creak of the backyard gate. She rushed to the window and looked out. A figure stood near the tree line. "Ray, he's here," she whispered into the emergency radio. Before she could blink again, Duke leapt up, bounded down the hallway, and growled louder. The motion light in the backyard snapped on, and the figure froze like a deer caught in a headlight. Duke exploded through the back door before Emily could even reach for the handle. The man turned and bolted, crashing through bushes and over the fence. But Duke was fast even at his age. He was trained for this. Sirens wailed in the distance. Ray was already on his way. Emily ran outside in her robe, breath visible in the cold air. She called out, "Duke, come back." Then, from the street, headlights washed across the lawn, and Officer Ray's car came to a screeching stop. 2 officers jumped out and gave chase. Moments later, Gerald Blake was tackled and cuffed. Duke returned seconds later, panting but unharmed, tail wagging slightly as he dropped something at Emily's feet, a black baseball cap. Ray approached, eyes scanning the cap, then the bush where Gerald had hidden. "You are right," he said. He came back. Gerald screamed as he was shoved into the back of the cruiser. "That dog ruined my life." "No," Ray said, stepping forward. "You ruined your own. That dog just made sure you didn't hurt anyone else." Emily knelt beside Duke and hugged him tight. "Good boy," she whispered. From the upstairs window, Lily watched silently, her small hand pressed to the glass. When Duke looked up at her, she smiled and gave him a thumbs up. The next morning, the story hit the news again. Hero dog thwarts late-night intruder, former accuser caught at scene. Reporters didn't know the whole story, but they knew enough to crown Duke with a new title, the dog who won twice. But for Duke, titles meant nothing. All that mattered was that Lily was safe, and once again, she whispered to him over breakfast, "You're still my hero, good boy." He thumped his tail and rested his head on her lap, where it belonged. The arrest of Gerald Blake marked the final closure of a painful chapter. For weeks afterward, the entire town of Elmdale walked with heads held a little higher, proud that truth had triumphed in their own backyard. But Duke didn't know he was making headlines again. He didn't understand news anchors, press conferences, or trending hashtags. All he knew was that his little girl, Lily, was safe and that she kept sneaking him extra treats under the dinner table. When her mom wasn't looking, But the world outside had taken notice. Duke's story had gone global. Major media outlets reached out for exclusive interviews. Talk shows asked for Emily, Lily, and Duke to appear together. An award-winning journalist published a long-form article titled "The Whisper That Saved a Hero," featuring stunning photos of Lily and Duke playing in their yard, and a timeline of events that captivated readers worldwide. And came the letter. From Washington. A representative from the National Law Enforcement Canine Foundation invited them to a ceremony in Washington, D.C., where Duke would be honored with the Medal of Valor for Distinguished Canine Service, an award rarely given, and never before to a dog in retirement. Emily was stunned. I don't even own a dress fancy enough for D.C., she told Ray over the phone. Ray chuckled. Then I guess we're all getting new clothes. The invitation included travel, lodging, and even a custom suit for Duke, complete with a velvet collar and embroidered badge. When Lily heard the news, she squealed, "Do I get a medal too?" "You already got mine," Ray smiled, lifting her in his arms. "Right here." He pointed to his heart. The week leading up to the trip was filled with anticipation. Duke had become a symbol of courage, and the community rallied around him. The mayor declared the Friday before the trip Duke Day, giving every child in Elmdale a half-day of school and a free Duke's ice cream cone at the town square. At the farewell celebration, hundreds gathered. Children wore paper dog ears. Adults brought their pets, many of them former rescues or retired canines south. Emily stood on stage with Lily and Ray, holding back tears as they presented Duke with a handmade banner that read, "From duty to destiny, our town's guardian." Lily gave a small speech. "Duke is my hero because he listened when no one else did. I hope every kid has a dog like him, one that protects you even when you're scared to ask for help." The applause shook the ground. Their journey to Washington was filled with excitement. Cameras flashed as they arrived at the airport. Duke, calm as ever, wore noise-canceling ear covers and sat at Lily's feet during the flight like a seasoned traveler. A pilot came out of the cockpit just to take a photo with him. At the National Memorial Hall, the ceremony was held in a grand auditorium filled with police officers, veterans, senators, and members of the military. The audience rose when Duke walked down the red carpet, flanked by Officer Ray on one side and Lily on the other. Emily wore a navy blue dress with a small paw print brooch over her heart. She clutched Lily's hand tightly, overwhelmed by the moment. The host, a decorated general, took the stage. There are few moments in service history where the hero wears a collar instead of a badge. But make no mistake, Duke served with more honor than many men ever will. He risked his life to protect a child, stood trial with dignity, and now spends his golden years healing others. He paused. "We don't give this medal easily. It is reserved for the few who embody courage, loyalty, and compassion. And today, we are proud to add Duke to that list." The crowd rose again. Ray leaned down and placed the medal gently around Duke's neck. Duke sat tall, tail sweeping the stage floor, his head turned slightly toward the crowd as if posing for every camera. Then Lily stepped forward. She reached into her small backpack and pulled out a handmade medal she had crafted, with glitter, stickers, and a big pink ribbon. "I made this one," she said, "because I think dogs like hugs more than gold." She wrapped it gently around Duke's neck alongside the official medal. People laughed, sniffled, and applauded louder than before. The ceremony continued, but the moment belonged to Duke. That image, Lily in her purple dress, hugging Duke in his decorated vest, became the photo seen around the world. That night, Emily sat on the hotel balcony, watching the Washington skyline shimmer in the distance. Ray joined her, 2 mugs of cocoa in hand. "You ever think it would come to this?" he asked. She smiled. "Not in a million years." I thought we were just keeping a dog safe. I didn't realize we were giving the world back some hope. Ray nodded. He's more than a dog now. He's a reminder of what we're supposed to be. Inside, Duke lay curled at the foot of Lily's bed, both of them fast asleep after the long day. The metals around his neck clinked softly as he shifted. Back home in Elmdale, the hospital where Duke made regular visits unveiled a mural on its front wall. Lily and Duke, painted in vibrant color, standing under a tree, with the words, "One whisper can change the world." Schools began using Duke's story as part of their kindness curriculum. Other police departments across the country began considering therapy training for retired K9s, and letters poured in from parents who said their children were sleeping better, feeling braver, or asking for dogs of their own, just like Duke. To Lily, he was still her bedtime buddy, her superhero on four legs, her shadow in the backyard. And every night, no matter what city they visited or what medal Duke received, she would press her nose against his and whisper, "You're my hero. Good boy." And Duke, as always, would close his eyes and wag his tail. Years passed, but the story of Duke and Lily remained etched in the hearts of many. The quiet town of Elmdale had grown, but the spirit of loyalty and courage that Duke represented never faded. And neither did the bond between the dog and the little girl who had saved him with a whisper. Lily was no longer 3. She was a bright, confident 9-year-old now. Her curls had grown longer, and her laughter filled every corner of their home. Duke, though older and slower, still had the same gentle eyes and steadfast heart. Every morning, Lily would brush Duke's graying coat, whispering secrets just for him. Duke, faithful as ever, listened without fail. One spring afternoon, Emily and Officer Ray sat on the porch watching Lily and Duke chase butterflies across the yard. The sun painted golden streaks on their faces, and the world seemed at peace. Ray leaned back, sighing contentedly. "You know, I never thought I'd see the day when Duke would retire and live like this." Emily smiled softly. "Neither did I, but maybe that's what heroes deserve, a chance to just be." Suddenly, Lily ran over, breathless and glowing. "Mom! Dad, I want to tell you something," she said, eyes shining. Emily and Ray exchanged a glance. "I'm going to start a club at school," Lily announced proudly. "It's called the Good Boys and Girls Club. It's for kids who want to help animals, learn how to be brave, and make the world kinder." Duke wagged his tail as if approving. Emily squeezed Ray's hand. "That sounds wonderful." Ray nodded. "Just like you, Lily." That evening, as Lily fell asleep with Duke curled by her side, Emily reflected on how a whisper from a tiny voice had changed everything. She remembered the courtroom, the silence that followed Lily's words, the way Duke had responded. Judge's softened gaze. She thought of the fearful nights when Gerald Blake lurked nearby, and the courage Duke had shown protecting her family. And she smiled at the countless lives Duke had touched since children. Patience, families, his legacy growing far beyond Elmdale. The next morning, Emily received a letter in the mail. It was from the National Law Enforcement K9 Foundation. Inside, a certificate read, "Duke is hereby inducted into the K9 Hall of Fame for outstanding bravery and service to humanity." Beneath the words was a photo of Duke and Lily at the Washington ceremony. Forever frozen in time, Emily placed the certificate on the wall next to Lily's drawing of Duke, the one from that unforgettable day in court. Later that week, the local newspaper ran a feature story titled, "A Whisper That Changed a Nation: How a 3-year-old and a police dog Redefined Heroism." The article told of Duke's journey from police work to the courtroom, to therapy dog visits, and now to his permanent place in history. People from all over sent messages of thanks and shared stories of how Duke's story inspired them to be braver, kinder, and more compassionate. But amid the national acclaim and media attention, the most important moments remained private quiet mornings on the porch, bedtime cuddles, and the gentle, unspoken bond between a girl and her dog. One evening, Lily asked her mother, "Do you think Duke knows how much he means to everyone?" Emily smiled, brushing a stray curl behind Lily's ear. "I think he knows exactly." Lily hugged Duke tightly, whispering, "You're my hero, good boy." Duke closed his eyes, resting his head on her shoulder. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Because sometimes the greatest acts of courage and love come not from words shouted loud, but from the softest whispers in the world. And in the story of Duke and Lily, those whispers changed a courtroom, saved a life, and touched a nation forever.